or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event. As they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo check? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
I have not been able to hear any. I think I'm hearing something now. All right. Hey, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, carrying stones and digging holes. Radio show on Revolution Radio. Yeah, I have zero idea if I'm on or not on. I heard something. Okay, so I'm going to assume that I'm on. Anyway, I'm trying to get my guest on. For some reason, Skype is not being friendly and is not seeming to let me get my guest on. No matter how much preparation was made today. And so let me see. Let me see if I can actually get him on. Let me see if I just love how, you know, hold on a second. I just really love how, I just really love your, oh good, I'm live. All right, so we're good. So, okay, everybody, sorry about this. I'm going to go in and see if I can't get him on another way. And so, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can go to our funding page and you can see all the ways that you can fund us because we are listener supported. And hold on one second. I just want to see whatever else I have. Oh, here we go. Let's try this one. Okay, so let me go back to, yeah, so our owner operator said Skype is being a bad word today. So seriously, it's being a bad. Okay, let me see if I can go on here and see if I can find Stephen Smith in a different way. Because it's just being a turd muffin. Also, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You can find me in Studio A where the schedule is. Click on that. Click on Studio A. You can find me carrying stones and digging holes, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the bee flying around with the flower. And click on that, and then you can find out information and about me, and also if you want to contact me. So I have to scroll down through my Skype to see if I can't find, yeah, so hold on one second. It should give me several choices here. So that was 2 days ago. And then, oh, here we go. Let's try this one. All right, let's see if we got something rolling. Okay, it's dialing. Let's see what we have. Anyway, I'm really excited to have Stephen Smith back on. He's a corn curator. He has the largest himself. Hey, are you there?
Hey, Bridgette.
Hey, all right. So anyway, I had a little bit of technical difficulty getting you on. So anyway, so we're on the show already. It's already started, and I was kind of telling him a little bit about you while I was trying to get you on. And I was telling him that you're a corn curator. You have the largest collection of native seed corn from around the world. And I had Stephen on before a few months ago, and we talked about the corn mother and corn and kind of maybe some of the spiritual, more paranormal kind of effects of native seed, which makes it a little bit different than most seed. And so I was really looking forward today to maybe hearing some more, great stories, some of the stories you told about like the child's corn, in your situation when you were at the Heirloom Expo and how the little girl was attracted to that corn. So do you want to give us just a little, really simple background in case we have some listeners that haven't heard about you before?
Oh, yep, no problem. So I'm originally from Tennessee and Kentucky. I was raised in Tennessee, but we moved 20 minutes from the border, so both states are still home. But I have my bachelor's degree in agri-science, specifically for crop research and crop breeding. My parents they're retired crop breeders of about 30 years, which is where I get it from. So it runs in the family. And I got into the whole seed world when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And I've been collecting ever since, which is why I have such a rather vast collection of corn and beans and other rare varieties that I've obtained from people all over the world. And I currently work I moved to Pennsylvania, here, Devon, Pennsylvania. I work as the seed collection manager for the Roughwood Seeds collection, the oldest and largest private seed collection in Pennsylvania and the entire eastern seaboard as well. And I'm also part Cherokee Indian, so that's why a lot of people, if anyone checks out my Facebook, that's why my name is White Wolf or Dancing Wolf. That's my Cherokee name.
Awesome. Okay, so last time we talked, so tell us about Roughwood, because this is something that's kind of new since the last time that you were on our show. And you guys have amazing seeds. So can you tell us about how Roughwood came about?
Roughwood, we always get people that ask us, well, why is it called Roughwood? That's such an odd name. And the original owner that the house that I live in was built in 1805 as a tavern. And all of the old cowboys, when they were going, taking the cattle back and forth, they would stop here and stay here at the tavern. And a wealthy banker bought the place, Thomas Alexander Biddle, and he had a historic ancestral castle in Scotland or Ireland, I believe, called Roughwood. So when he bought this place, he took the name and put it to us, to the house here. So that's where the Roughwood comes from. The actual seed collection was unofficially started in 1932 by H. Ralph Weaver, which is, for anyone listening or that might want to look into it, that's William Roy William Woods Weaver's grandfather. And William is the amazing person I'm honored to be able to work with and learn from. He also lives here as well. He's an internationally known food historian, a chef, an author. He's kind of the one that basically started the entire heirloom seed movement back in the 90s. And all the way up until now, he's a very well-known name that, as I refer to him, he's Seed Jesus. So he's an walking encyclopedia. His grandfather started the collection in 1932 during the Great Depression here. And food was scarce for most of the households, and he was just obtaining seeds from the community, from his family, to feed his family. And he had a little 1-acre garden in Westchester, Pennsylvania here. So he acquired all these heirlooms and these Dutch varieties, German varieties, and he had a lot of people that would give him seed because they knew him, and he was a well-respected gardener and known person here. And he had what most people considered at the time in the 40s one of the best kitchen gardens in all of Pennsylvania. And other people would come by and stop by and see him. One of the famous African-American folk artists in Philadelphia, Horace Pippin, he knew William's grandfather, and that's where some of the really interesting peppers we have in the collection come from. But when his grandfather passed away, all of his seed was stored in the bottom of the freezer in his grandmother's house. And William, he found this collection buried when he was studying at the University of Virginia, and he started to grow a lot of these seed out, because with them being in the freezer, it kept them dormant and it killed all of the insects and diseases that might have been in the seed. So they lasted for decades after his death. And the 1970s and 80s, Will was growing all of this stuff out and trying to resurrect a lot of it, because most of the stuff that we have here in the Roughwood collection, we're the last people that have it. The entire collection has about 5,000 edible food plants within it, and it's a lot of seed and a lot of stuff to manage. And
no, I was kind of excited. Yeah, there was a couple things in there, like those bug or squash bug beetle resistant squashes that you guys have. I saw that on the feed the other day. And those are just they're naturally that way, right? They're just naturally resistant.
They're naturally resistant.
They're not GMO or Monsanto's. Yeah. They're just naturally made that way.
They're naturally made that way. Mother Nature did it herself.
Yeah, Mother Nature and the Creator did a good job. Okay, well, I just wanted to say that. But yeah, no, I'm really excited, to hopefully have land this year, if everything goes right, because I want to get lots of seed from you guys and do, outgrows, and because I'm really excited about growing things that I've never, seen before or, that I don't have like a really great relationship with. And we talked about the little bit of corn and stuff that I grew this last year, and just the experiences I had with it were just, kind of, let's just say, out of this world. But anyway, continue on, because is it roughwood.com? Is that it? The website?
Well, we are in the middle of actually restructuring the entire organization, because Roughwood is a nonprofit organization. So any of the books we sell, the seed we sell, all of that goes to fund us as a nonprofit. So it's www.roughwoodtable.org, all lowercase and no spaces.
Okay, and then people can go and buy seeds there, or learn about the different seeds, the blurbs on them, and the books. And then Yes. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew, because, it is that time of year where people might want to start buying some seeds to grow this year. All right. Okay. So go ahead on the Roughwood and anything else that you want to add on about its history and kind of how it's gotten together and how you're playing your part, and maybe thoughts about where you guys are headed with it.
So the future of the collection is really what the Roughwood table will be. The Roughwood table will be the kind of the mother organization that combines a now dissolved nonprofit that William had founded here, that was dedicated to studying the local food culture, and incorporating all of these heirloom varieties into the food that we eat and cook today, since they are more nourishing than Monsanto's synthetic garbage that has no flavor, has no nutrients, and it relies too heavily on the chemicals that are destroying most of the planet. And so we've been taking the kitchen side of everything and merging it with with Roughwood Seed Collection to make a mother entity that will not only have all of these seed and be giving them back to communities. And since we have a lot of Native American varieties that none of the tribes even have anymore, we will be giving seed back to the Native communities, and of course selling seed to help keep us going and to help us redo the house, renovate the house, and keep the gardens in shape. And we hope within the next 3 or 4 years, depending on, maybe sooner, depending on how things move forward, we want to do workshops and lectures and basically to teach people not only about the seeds, but how they used to be cooked, provide recipes that they can actually buy seed from us and grow it and then cook it from that, all the while keeping the story of the seed, how to grow it, and the culture that the seed come from, keeping it all together as a whole thing. That way it can spread while people are growing and cooking all this stuff. It says, as William says, heirloom seeds are food waiting to happen. So we're more so seed to table than we are farm to table, because not everyone knows where their food comes from, and that's something that we want to educate people about. So
yeah, that's one. Hold on a second. I've got all kinds of technical issues today. Okay, that's one of the things that I do is I educate people, how to create microbial mass, on soil. And I travel to do that in the summers. And sometimes I get to spend a lot of time teaching people how to, create the perfect environment for the perfect seed, right? And then also, and how the different plants have relationships with each other, and how important some of those relationships are. And so I'm really excited to hear that, component of it, teaching people, like a carrot doesn't come out of the back storage room at the grocery store. It actually comes out of dirt. And, what the process is, because there's a lot of things that people don't really understand. I mean, like most carrots, you have to leave them in the ground, and then the next year they come back and they seed, so not all seeds seed right away. Some seeds have to be, plants have to be in perfect condition in order to collect seeds, and you have to be, save, and, it's a very thoughtful process, and a deep understanding of, the soil, the seed, to the growth of the plant, and then the collection of the seed, the following period. So, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. It's kind of interesting. I've been thinking about a lot from, kind of when I was at Rudolf Steiner College studying biodynamic farming. And I was thinking a lot about a lot of the conversations during that time frame were around the Great Depression. And there is, no doubt, regardless if we're having a financial depression now or not, there are a lot of people that think that those indications are coming. And so it's interesting that you're working with a guy whose work came from a man who, was in the Great Depression, dealt with the Great Depression, and that, his focus was about these seeds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because really, the only sovereignty we really have is the seed. And whose hands those seeds are in, and the knowledge of the person, growing the food and the plants and keeping the survival growing. You want to talk maybe a little bit about that kind of food sovereignty and seeds and maybe those kinds of ideas? What your beliefs are?
One of the other reasons that we do what we do here at Roughwood, and one of the other reasons why that I decided to take on the position of being the manager for the collection, is that the stuff that is in Roughwood, as with a lot of other family heirlooms around the world and other seed organizations, is that what we have is, it's extremely unique, and every seed is connected to some kind of culture, whether it's local, statewide, nationally, or most of our stuff is international. And most people don't realize that the entire global food system and even the seed system is owned by about 4 companies. And it's probably more like 2, since they've been buying each other out all the time. And this is one of the real concerns that we have, is because the people, for the most part, no longer own their food. They don't own the seed either. They can't save their own seed because these larger companies don't believe in it, and they want you to buy their seed so they can make money. And it's a whole ball roll, so to speak, of how they're doing it. And everything that they've been breeding is with GMO, usually with GMO technology. They're hybrid. They have genes from animals put into the corn or into the peppers or squash to give them some kind of resistance, because they don't think that there's plants out there that naturally have insect resistance or disease resistance, when there actually are. There's thousands, if not millions, of heirlooms all across the world. And a lot of the stuff we have in the collection, like the Seminole squash pumpkin from Florida that you saw, it is resistant to actually powdery mildew, which most squash and pumpkins suffer, and squash bugs, because it evolved natural resistance to it. Because if the plants can't evolve, then they may die out and go extinct. And that's the great thing about heirlooms and what we have here in Roughwood, and what actual food sovereignty would be considered: saving your own seed, cooking with those seed and produce from those seed, and being able to pass the story and seed down without any legal problems or trying to be not told that you can do something that humans have done for thousands of years naturally. So we're not only trying to teach people how to cook this stuff and how to grow it, we're also trying to give them a light to make them look at their food system and kind of open their eyes about just how poor we've made the food that we're currently eating, that most of it hardly has any nutrients in it. The GMO technology that they put into this stuff, they really haven't tested what it will do to humans, or if they have, that research is by the corporate companies is made to disappear, or they ghostwrite a lot of this research. That's something that was coming out, I think, since the last time you and I were talking. So there's safety and food sovereignty. And if we control our food, we as a nation and as a species itself, as the human species, we're a lot better off than we would be, and that the route we're currently heading, than we are with anything else.
Yeah. So some of the conversations I've had with a few people kind of involved in like the native seed movements and stuff like that, and that we've talked about, is that originally like the native seeds, and I'm not really sure, each individual calls them something different. They call them like they're older than the heirloom, more of the ancient seeds or the heritage seeds, or, there's kind of low seeds, then there's more of these, some hybrids, and then or not hybrids, but the heirlooms. And then there's the, hybrids that are, pharma kind of genetically modified, and then the GMO. And so even before Monsanto's, they genetically modified the tomatoes. They made hybrids. So they may not actually have the pesticides and the other stuff that's injected into the cell, the DNA and the RNA of the seed, but they have been crossed with things like shrimp. And in some cases, people who have like serious reactions to a fish or crustacean like shrimp, if they eat these tomatoes, because they made the tomatoes be able to like grow in cold climate, and also be able to have a longer shelf life, refrigerator shelf life. But for example, if somebody was to eat something that was a hybrid like that before the kind of Monsanto's, they could actually die of anaphylactic shock, because, it wasn't disclosed to the people that what their food has been hybrided with. And so sometimes, I think people get lost in the conversation about seeds is because they were hybrided, and that those are the seeds that originally started coming in. And so wasn't it like, you would know more than I know, but I think it was like around the 20s, wasn't it, that we started to see a lot of the heirloom, indigenous type, heritage seeds start to vanish. And then we started to see some of these hybrids that they were already starting to put into society. Wasn't it about that time, or was it earlier, do you think?
The bigger hybrid boom was around the 20s. That's when the first hybrid corn started to really be popularized and advertised as being better than your local corn that you've been growing and stuff like that. But there's been hybrids for centuries, and some of the older heirlooms and varieties, they're natural hybrids, whether they happen by nature or if early humans crossed this wild grass and this together to make wheat, or they took two ancient corns and crossed them together to make something that they wanted to use for grinding or whatever else they wanted to do. And a lot of the early seed companies in the 1800s, they were having people cross local heirloom tomatoes together to make a new hybrid, and but all that was done by hand. That was conventional breeding. And a lot of these older hybrids, now that they're stabilized, they're actually considered heirlooms. So it's a interesting thing to look at it. I prefer to use the term genetically engineered instead of genetically modified, because in the sense of genetic modification, we as humans have done that to plants and animals for thousands of years. And it's when you start engineering, when you're taking, say, shrimp DNA and putting it into a plant to give it cold tolerance or something like that, that's what actual genetic engineering is. And those terms need to be rewritten in order to kind of better explain that to people so they have a better grasp on it. But starting after the 20s, the whole hybrid boom, it just kept growing, and they replaced a lot of the old local stuff, and that's another reason why we've lost so much, is because all these hybrids made people want to grow them and not their family tomato or potato or something. A lot of that stuff just disappeared after that.
Right. And the other thing too is so a couple of things, the USA has been involved with going to other countries and basically forcing their countries by giving them aid to get rid of all of their indigenous crops, their family foods, and replacing them with either free trade, which is that we send over our bulk crops like, poison wheat and poison corn and onions and things like that, and force them to live off that. Or we force their farmers to grow more of the, bad crops. But I think that people in general don't really realize how far this goes back. And how I kind of got involved with gardening and seed is that, traditional osteopath, been doing, medicine for 30 years. And my focus was always kind of nutrition. And when I started kind of going back into a lot of the stuff that the American Medical Association, because they're involved in a lot of this food crime, because they don't really train their doctors in any form of nutrition training at all. They get a ditto for, 12 years of education and internship. They get a 4-page document and are told that nutrition really isn't going to help anybody. So don't even worry about it. So they're kind of also involved in the crime. But back when the corn, like you were talking about, that corn, when they started to put out the genetically modified corn into the public in the 20s, they lied about that, about the effects. And what their history says in the nutrition field is that the corn started to be handled different. So there was never in the history, like in the bulk history, nutritional history, disease history, the fact that there was a different corn that was put into society and the better corn was basically taken out or eradicated or, just wasn't available for purchase. And so what they say is that the corn started being processed differently. And once that happened, that it wasn't that the corn changed, but it was processed differently, that all of a sudden people started getting massive during the 20s when all this happened with the corn, because a lot of people in the United States lived on corn and making of different kinds of corn food products, that there was some really horrible skin and mental disorders that started to appear rapidly right around that time. And the truth is that the corn that they were eating, the more natural indigenous corns to their areas in the United States, were removed. And when they went to go buy new corn seed, they ended up buying genetically modified seed, and then they started sharing those seeds. And that's what caused the massive nutritional deficiencies. And so this is why you start to see, mainstream food products start to add B vitamins into their bread products, or, especially dealing with corn and wheat and things like that, because basically pretty much all the B vitamins were, demolitioned out of it when it became modified. But the thing is they even hide that kind of a history from us as well, going back to that era. Anyway, just some thoughts. I just try to help people kind of get their heads wrapped around it. And then also you and I have kind of had conversations about in the past about how the Native people, would have, their seeds would have been everything, would have been their food, would have been their money, would have been, how they had relationships with other tribes. It would have been how, even the marrying, the situations with marriage and children. And and families, and also, traveling. If they were a little bit nomadic, they may have gone to other areas just for the growing season to make sure that their seeds were grown in the best possible conditions and then brought back and stored. And so the seed was basically, maybe the most important, factor and foundation of their lives. So do you want to talk maybe about that? About, how important the seed is and was?
The thing that I always try to stress to people is exactly what you're saying, is that seed and the food that we basically eat to nourish our bodies, they were sacred. And the tribes, they still, to most Native Americans today, that's still the case. And people today, because most people are so disconnected with where their food comes from, the history of these plants, and how they came to be in early human history in general, is that they forget that before we had canned tomatoes and canned corn and supermarkets that we could just go pick this stuff up from, people had to grow it themselves, and then you would take it and trade it in your community, or take it out of state, or even back in by the time that the explorers were coming to North America, there were trade routes all the way from Canada down to Chile and Argentina. And of course, this was before any horses or anything were used. This is native people walking the whole distance back and forth, bringing these seed with them, bringing food with them to eat along the way, and all the while bringing their own culture and an exchange of not only the seed, but the stories, how to grow it, and everything like this. And corn was always seen as a mother in most tribes. Some tribes have a male version and some have a female version. A lot of them have both, since corn plants are both technically male and female. The Aztecs and the Maya seen it as a duality, that life itself was male and female. There was no one set gender, which is the way I kind of view the world and view life as well. But all of these seed and all of these plants and all of this food, it was their religion. No matter what religion people are today, we all come from pagan ancestors. Nature was everything to our ancestors, and the food and seed that we had, that's what let us live. And that's why they worshipped corn and worshipped wheat and beans and all of these other seeds, because they were seen as sacred life. And this is why, on the gory side of everything, human lives were often sacrificed in order to be sure that a crop was able to be harvested so that people didn't starve. And that's why all the labor would go into the fields, in order so society wouldn't collapse completely and disappear. Or in most cases, that the deities that these ancient peoples worshipped, that they wouldn't upset the deities that were connected to these crops. Because that, in turn, they could cause a drought, maybe a flood, or cause human sickness, or cause a war, or something like that. But it's all the circle of life, and within most of these seed, that's what a lot of these ancient peoples, that's what they seen seed as, was a cycle of life. You plant a seed in the ground, it has to sit there in the darkness of the soil, the underworld, as most tribes thought, and through the miracle of germination, the seed would sprout, rise up, be reborn again, and produce a bounty, and then die again, and the cycle would just keep going and going, which is why sacred plants like corn became a foundation for birth and rebirth in ancient history and ancient cultures. But they seen the world a lot differently, and they truly respected what we were given to survive off of. And the GMO companies and the big corporate companies, they don't care about that. Their main concern is, well, how much money can we make off of this? And all of this research that they claim was done, if it ain't to their liking, they make it disappear, or they make the people that wrote it disappear. All these companies like Monsanto, they're not as nice and considerate as people think they are. They're not there for the general human being. They're there for themselves. They want the money they can get out of the stuff. They don't respect the ancient Native American values of how sacred the land is and how sacred the seed is. And this is why that I tell people that stuff like GMO corn, it's not really alive anymore. It's synthetic life. It has no spirit. The ancient heirloom corns that I have, I have the two oldest that still exist, that are the ancestors to basically all of the corn that we know today. Things like them, they have spirit because they were connected to humanity, and humans created it naturally. They didn't forcefully genetically engineer this stuff. They nurtured it, they cared for it, they respected it. It was their religion. So it still has spirit. But this synthetically made corn, soybeans, wheat, tomatoes, whatever you want to call it, it's not connected to the earth anymore. It's tainted, it's poisoned. And that whole basis is, a lot of the Native Americans, they see it like that, and they're usually surprised when I explain it like that. But that's the way I see it. And if you control the food we eat, you control the nation, you control the world, you control the people. And so we're going to have to do something to fix this. If not, we're going to keep going down the dark road that we're headed toward, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I totally agree, because the seed, the food, affects the soil, affects the water, affects the air. It affects our health or lack of health in all the animals and people of the world. And it affects our monetary systems, our just everything in our whole world. And it took me a while to figure that out, after going back to Rudolf Steiner College and wanting to get, the focus of my private practice to be more the focus of nutrition and what nutrition really was. And then I wanted to grow, medicinal herbs. And I'm still in the process of building my, all my relations with the soil, right, and the seeds. And so I don't know how long I'm off before I'm going to really have this whole medicinal plant thing figured out and have that relationship built so that I can actually make medicine that benefits people. But when I started realizing that it was basically the seed and the plant and the soil and the water that were the main components of everything, and because of the fracture and the disharmony and the lies and the deceit and the misinformation about seeds and soil and food being grown and water, everything is wrong in the world, completely 100% wrong. And I remember on the last show, there was a lot of things that you said that I really thought about, over the last few months, because I have to tell you, and I'm sure everybody around you is just astonished by you, because you're not very old, but you are just like just the wise man, especially about the seed and, where we need to head. And so, but one of the things that you said was that, one of your seeds, I think, or two of your seeds are, can be traced back like 5,000 years. And you said, so we have no idea what that seed knows. Obviously it knows, way more in its code and its genetics. It knows way more about this whole world and how this world functions than we know. You know, it knows about what the water was like before, what it needs to do, you know, to adapt in a good way with the structures going on, what it might have in it. I've had it suggested that, you know, the native teachings are that when these seeds, you know, kind of start going back into the ground, they can actually heal the environment on so many levels because the plants are putting the original codes, you know, of creation kind of back into these areas, and also informing the people who are working with the seeds. So I just loved when you said that, like, you know, the seed knows way more than, you know, these native seeds, indigenous seeds know way more than we could ever know. So why not, you know, plant them and pay attention to them and see what they have, you know, to benefit and offer as far as a teacher kind of a thing. You want to talk about the seed and maybe like some of its, you know, codings and understandings and maybe why that they work so well, you know, with changing the environments on multiple levels, and anything that you've come to understand about the seeds and its coding and, you know, anything like that. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome.
It's one of my favorite things to talk about anyway, because I love plant genetics, and the whole viewpoint I have on science it's changed from what it used to be when I was a lot younger, because I didn't understand necessarily everything at that point. Of course now I don't know everything, and I don't understand everything either. But the way I see it is that we're not necessarily meant to know everything and understand everything. And life is a learning process the whole way, regardless of whatever it is. And these ancient plants and ancient seeds, they have more knowledge than we ever will be able to gather about what the earth used to be like. Yeah, we can go drill a hole in the Arctic and pull out ice and everything, but that doesn't necessarily give you all of the changes over time as a plant has. The corn that I have dates back at least 5,000 years. I have one that probably dates back about 6,000 or 7,000 years. And while that seems like a relatively recent time, in a sense, in a way it is, but that's 7,000 years, 5,000 years, 4,000 years of not only local history, but human history and nature and everything. All these plants are absorbed into their genetic codes that they're remembering. And they have memory. They have what's known as genomic imprinting. So all of these genes that might have first appeared 7,000 years ago, that's still within their memory. They know how people used to treat them. They know the ancient songs that used to be sung to them. They know how the earth used to be before everything kind of blown up. And they still have all of this within their memory. And if they're planted somewhere that stresses them out, they'll go back into their memory and pull up DNA from 5,000 years ago when there might have been a drought or something to help them survive this. They do this, and they pull these genes out of their memory in order to adapt, which is one of the most fascinating things I think that I've ever seen. But people also forget that life itself is a spiritual journey. It's a energy. Every living thing has energy, and even some non-living things have energy. And planting these ancient seeds can restore the good energy to the earth. It can help heal the earth, and it can even help heal us as well. A lot of these ancient seeds, they were used in healing ceremonies to heal the sick or heal the dying or help them cross over. But one of the things that I tell people too is that if we start planting more of these ancient varieties and these heirlooms and these land races, it'll help not only heal the earth itself, which is in dire need of it, but it'll also help teach us as humans more about where we came from, where our food comes from, the things that these plants have learned for thousands of years, and just being able to make us more connected with nature and realize that we as humans, we're not separate from her. We are her, and she is us. And if we can ever get the world to realize that again, I think it'll be a lot better place. And that's the other thing with seed that I love, is that it can give you that connection with life, and you realize just how precious our time on earth is, and that the seed can be renewed, but not all other forms of life have that gift that the seed does, to be grown out and keep itself going, as much as we humans can do it too, but it's not necessarily the same process and not the same thing. Plants and other other organisms like them, they can do it a lot better than we can. But I just believe that if we grow more and more of this stuff, that it'll help. I don't want to say fix society, but it'll help teach us ancient values and help us understand ourselves and everything else a lot better than what we currently have our situation is. That's not the brightest thing in the world.
Yeah. Okay. So in 2 minutes, we're going to go on break, and then we'll just be quiet for 4 minutes, let the promos roll. And then we're going to come back on for the second hour. But I wanted to, I was thinking about something that I know from my family, because I come from bloodlines, but different kinds of bloodlines. And one of the things is that these plants and how they used to grow with these, symbiotic relationships with the water and the air and everything. At one point in time, this planet, that we breathed in pollen as a part of our food source. And there are some scientists, though few and far between, and their information is repressed, that our lungs could have very well, taken in pollen as a food source. But the thing is that the plants would have produced the pollen in the air, and that food source would have been a little bit different. So the plants would have provided everything, the soil, the water, and the plants would have provided everything in our planet to be ingested by eating or breathed in. And we would have been constantly encoded with all of this information and data from the plants, because the plants would have been adapting as the environment changed and adapted. And then all of this stuff would have gone into our body one way, shape, or form. And that way our, processes could have also adapted with the environment. And nowadays, we don't really have any of those kinds of healthy things in our environment. We sure as heck don't have, pollen floating around like snowflakes anymore. We don't have all this information that's being gathered by other plants and moved from one place to another, like it used to be, so that everything in those environments could adapt, and the plants and the insects and the birds and everything managed all of that information and data that was sent out. It was readily absorbed. Okay, commercial. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Hang in there.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B. Exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
February is Heart Month. Every year for the month of February, to show our appreciation to Extendivite's faithful customers, we have a sale. If you would like to try Extendivite, now is the time to get a few months ahead and really give Extendivite the time to show you how it works. Most of Extendivite's long-term customers wait for this sale to stock up. People and doctors tell us about the unbelievable improvements that they have experienced in their overall health, not just the heart. Extendivite wants you to experience the power of these herbs. Get a 4-month supply for only $115 for either the capsules or tincture. Please take advantage of this once-per-year sale and get healthy for life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, this is okay. All right. Let's see. Hold on, it has a little bit of reverb. Okay, so anyway, that is just gonna drive me crazy. All right. Okay. Oh, I think it's better. Okay. So anyway, you are back, second hour of carrying stones and digging holes. And I have a return guest, Stephen Smith, who is working with the nonprofit roughwoodtable.org, www.roughwoodtable.org. And they have books and seeds, and some of their seeds you can't get anywhere else. And they are a nonprofit that is trying to It sounds like return the seeds back to the Native people. In some cases, the Native people haven't had a lot of these seeds in their own possession for a long time. We're talking about some food and seed sovereignty. We've also been talking about the different kinds of hybrids and genetic modifications to seeds, the different kinds of seeds, and seeds as their own computer hard drive, carrying information for thousands and thousands of years. Also, I just found out that we are doing a weekend fundraiser for the network for Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And they have things like a survival thumb drive library for $50. They have Mona making her custom designer handbags for people who donate $50 or more. 1 ounce silver bar, $50. So go over to the website and see what you can help with funding because we are listener supported. Okay, so now we're going to be back with Stephen Smith. So I'm going to let him kind of make a decision about like what he thinks important part or conversation that we should have starting out for the second hour. Any kind of information that he really thinks is important to talk about or he wants to bring to the surface, or anything, a story, anything that he loves to talk about. So we're going to let him go ahead and open the second hour with whatever he wants to have a dialogue about. All right. Are you there?
Yep, I'm still here.
All right. We're going to let you kind of ramble on with maybe some important thoughts that maybe you had the first hour or some things that you want to bring or talk about or stories or anything. Loved everything in the first hour as well.
Oh, let's see. There's so much I could talk about. That's the thing.
Sorry, I had to put you on the spot.
That's always the problem. People are like, well, you don't talk very much, but when you start talking, you can't shut up. I'm like, I know. That's exactly how I am anyway.
Well, that's what we like. We love people, especially people who can't shut up about food sovereignty and seeds.
I'm trying to think stories. What stories do I have? I have a lot of stories. I need to start writing this stuff down. It's all in my head, which is great. But at the same time, it's like, well, if I'm not going to write this down, then who's going to write it down? If I don't write it down, then no one's going to know it, and then it would be lost to the world.
Serious. No, that's one of the things that cracks me up. Like you'd post a seed, we have this seed in our Roughwood, online catalog, and then you would have this native story about it. And then I would go to the seed catalog and I'd be disappointed because the native story didn't come with the seed. I just talked about the seed and how to grow it and everything. And I was like, well, I'm kind of bummed out about that because the reason I wanted to go to there and look for the seed is because I wanted to see more about the story and the story wasn't there. So that's what I like a lot about you is that you have, and probably because of your native heritage, you have also not only just collected the seeds, but you've collected the stories about the seeds.
And I try to get everyone that wants to donate something to us or that I obtain, one of my first questions besides, can I have seed of that, is, well, what's the story behind it? How long have you had it? Who in your family had it? What was it called? And all of that stuff. Because it's like, we, not only us at Roughwood, but myself in general, it's like, well, I want to know the history about this seed. Like, it's like maybe it's not a colorful, three-colored bean or something. What if it's just a normal white bean or a normal brown bean? Well, what makes it special? Why did your family keep it so long? And how did you eat it? And what do you like about it? And everything like that. Because to me, it's like that's just as important as keeping the seed alive. I mean, the actual identity of seeds is really from the stories and from the people that they come from. It's like that's what makes a lot of the seeds we have in the collection is that they have a interesting story. Maybe it's not 5 pages long, but we still have the story. It's like I love the history behind the stuff we have, and some of the seeds we have not only date back thousands of years, even some of the ones that date back hundreds of years, they're still they're still some of the most interesting things I've ever seen. And like we have an apple tree in the front yard here at Roughwood that dates back to the 1200s. So last summer I was just going down at the end of the driveway, just picking apples that were grown in the 1200s, and I'm thinking, one, who else in the world can do this? And two, who else my age would even be interested in stuff like this? Which is the other thing that, if a lot of you listeners don't know, I'm only 22. I probably sound like I'm 5,000 years old or something, but I don't know. I was fortunate enough to have been raised, I guess, by my parents that loved this stuff too, and that taught me to value what we have and just know where our food comes from, and not be like most people my age that think milk comes from a store in Walmart. Like that's true, but that's not the original source of milk. And peanuts don't grow on trees and all of that lovely stuff that I've heard throughout my seed work journey.
Well, one of the funny things that cracked me up with the last show is one of the things you said was that I can't ever say no to a seed. If it knocks on the door, comes in, it's you can't ever say no to it. So.
Yeah, that's still true. I have so many flowers, heirloom flowers to plant this year that I don't even know where we're going to put them. And we have a whole bunch of new old, very rare tomatoes that I've gotten for us at Roughwood, and I probably have almost 100 more varieties, which puts it at like 300 total tomatoes within the collection. And I'm thinking, where in the world am I going to plant all of this? I need to stop getting it. Oh, look, there's another tomato we don't have. I'm going to get that one too. I can't say no, and it's at this point, I guess it's an obsession. But I've told people, I'm like, when I reach 2,000 corn varieties, I'm going to stop. And have I done that? No, I keep getting more and more, and I don't know what I'm going to do with all of this corn. But you know what?
Well, we hope
I have it. So
well, and we hope at some point, I hope to really help you this year. I mean, my goal is to finish getting the funding for land so that I can, call you up on the phone and say, send me what you need outgrows with, and I'll find a place to put it so that we could, get the seed from it, right? And I can send you some back, and I can share it and, do whatever I need to do with it. So I really hope I can actually help you in your in your mission here in the short term and the long term, because I would really like to spend a lot of time over the next 10 years with seed, planting seed, getting to know it, and being part of its, genetic livelihood experience and its genomes, and helping it, and then, sending it back out to travel along its way for sure. I think it's probably the most important thing that we could do right now, singularly, in order to change things. I just have to, last year, Stephen and I talked about this on the last show, but I had an experience where, it was really supernatural, on all levels. And I watched how these native seeds came in, were in the dormant process, the underworld, and how it actually, other people who were on the property where I grew it, had serious, effects from before the seed decided to pop forward. And it was almost like the seed, when it was in the underworld, had to bring all of the stuff to the surface. And that included old emotional stuff, anger, health issues, like every possible thing that the seed, when I put it into the ground, to actually, start to grow it, and all of the stuff that was those underlying factors on the land, in the soil, in the water, in the people, in the animals, all, had to come to the surface before that seed, is willing to come up. And And then once it did start coming up, they completely changed the whole environment, geometrically, their frequency, the harmonics, just every, the soil, the air, they just started changing everything within their environment. Like you were saying, that, we have to start getting these seeds in the ground so that they can actually start changing the world, because they actually have the information, they have the data, they have the understanding on all kinds of different levels. And this is kind of like what the ceremonies, a lot of the ceremonies were about, is the activation of these energies, right? Working alongside, these energies of these plants, because the plants were part of, part of their spiritual practice and their relationships to everything else. Anyway, do you have any stories about that? About any, special ceremonies, or talking about kind of like the supernatural end of these seeds and how they can change? I mean, like, for example, a tree that goes back to the 1200s. I mean, the energy that tree, generates, and the relationship that it has with its environment, and what it brings to the table, that environment would surely be lost without that tree, if somehow that tree was cut down or destroyed because somebody else moved onto the property and decided that, that tree wasn't important anymore, that apple tree. Do you have anything to add about any of those ideas?
Let's see, stories.
Or anything that you want to talk about, seeing environments either get better or worse, depending on what's removed or what's brought in. Or anything you would like to talk about.
Some of the seeds and some of the corns that I have in my collection, they were used in sacred ceremonies that were to heal not only people, but to heal the land itself. Whether it was abused, or if it had war that was left blood stains on it, or stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff like that, it has so much energy and spirit to it that just planting it alone can reshape an entire environment. And just trying to plant and undo all of this environmental disaster that we've put ourselves in with what all of these hybrids and genetically modified plants are doing to the soil and water and food system. If we plant more of these heirlooms and these ancient things, then we can reshape how we perceive the world and how the world perceives us in the same sense, and try to do as much good as we can, and not only keeping ourselves alive, but keeping these seed alive, their stories, the time period that they come from, and stuff like that. Because there's some plants and some seed. Since I was a former botany major before I switched over to agriculture, there are just some plants and some seeds that I'm so drawn to that I have no absolute knowledge or reason why I want to grow, say, this corn or this bean or get this tree that may not even survive here, but I still want to grow it. And I get on these binges, and that's usually how I end up with a lot more stuff than I can ever possibly plant and grow. But after I do plant them, I'll suddenly realize that maybe I've been holding on to this problem or this issue or this emotion, and by just growing this plant, it'll suddenly be brought to the light that I need to get rid of it, move on, or that there's just some kind of lesson that I might need to learn or realize in some of these plants that I want to grow and everything. And one of the trees that I've had for I think 3 or 4 years now, it's the second rarest conifer in the world, and it's from a very tiny little geographical region in the forests of Florida and Georgia. And this tree, the actual genus, is I think 10 or 12 million years old. And here I am growing this poor tree that there's only 500 or 600 of them left in the wild. None of them are old enough to produce seed. They've been attacked by this fungus that ever since the climate started warming, this fungus has been spreading. It's been killing these poor trees that no sooner than they get ready to reach an age where they can flower and make cones, that this fungus kills them down to the stump, and they try to regrow, but they keep dying. So here I am with one of these ancient trees that is on the verge of extinction, and that most scientists and botanists agree that no matter what we do, the tree will probably go extinct in the wild, and it'll only survive in cultivation. And I'm like, well, I have to have one of these trees. Or this was like 4 or 5 years ago when I was writing the novel that I published when I was a junior in high school. I'm like, well, I want one of these trees, but how am I going to get one? And through my botany contacts, I ended up actually getting a young one of these trees, and it might be 30 foot tall by the time I'm 80 because these grow so slow. But I'm like, I want to grow this tree. I don't know why, besides that it's rare and that I can say I have one. So I don't quite know why I want to grow it so much. I brought cuttings here to Pennsylvania of this tree that I'm going to try to for us to put in the yard here. Is at the other side of the gardens here, we have another tree that is extinct in the wild, the Franklinia, named after Benjamin Franklin, that the Bartrams discovered in Georgia in like 1765. It's related to black tea and green tea that we drink. You can actually make a similar tea with the leaves. But we have one of them trees here that blooms every fall for us, and I'm trying to regrow some of it from seed because it's supposed to be extremely hard to grow, yet it seems to flourish where it's at. And when William told me about it, that we had one, I about fainted because I've always wanted to see one and grow one and just be able to be in the presence of one and never know why. So there's some of these connections and I guess stories that I'm waiting for them to unfold because I don't have the answers right now that I might want, or I just don't know what the meaning of this is until it is somehow revealed to me. That's how a lot of people wonder how I know what I know, and it's like, well, I'm an old soul, I guess, for one, and for two, I just learn from the environment around me and mostly from plants, because I'm like, well, they can tell you a lot more than scientists sitting at their desk not knowing what the outside world even looks like. So it's a very weird world we live in, but I tell people, it's like, well, here, grow this lima bean, grow this corn, grow this squash, and tell me how you feel before, or I know how they feel before they grow it. And it's like, well, tell me how you feel after you grow it, and tell me what you learned. And it'll usually be something along the lines of like you with the corn that you planted there on your property, or some of the experiences I've had, like I talked about before. And it's interesting because when you get on that same wavelength frequency, whatever you want to call it, it kind of changes the entire environment around you, and the people, they kind of come more to understanding why I'm so crazy about plants and trying to save what I work with and why I do what I do. And most people my age think I'm absolutely crazy for doing what I'm doing, but I usually tell them, well, at least if something ever happens, at least I will be able to grow my own food.
Right. Well, I'll be 50, so I wish that I would have started out dealing with seeds and working, more with the more indigenous seeds. Before I did medicine, I kind of I'm going back around, right? Because I have to pick up a lot of information about health that's actually in the seed or the food, right? And the soil, which has everything to do about our health, and our relationship, to this planet. I had a teacher for a long time, Shoshone medicine elder teacher, and he specifically did these things and traveled for 16 years to do what he called earth healing ceremonies that released basically, like the violence and the blood from the water and the earth. And these ceremonies were like unbelievable. And so he kind of went out of the box about, he wanted people to take photos and to take video footage, and he wanted, us to share this work, with people around us, right? And, kind of as proof. And so during that proof, I have a specific picture that has a bunch of crystals that he would put, on part of the medicine altar to help release what he called the original sins, where the first violence and murder, took place in areas, to release it so that the earth could be healed in that area, and things could, all the beings could, be healed, and things could move forward. And on this particular altar, there was a glass of water that was brought because the ceremony was on this piece of land up in Sandpoint. So we did 10 days of these ceremonies across Sandpoint and Coeur d'Alene because there was so much, Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Nation. There was a lot of violence, murder. And then before that, the murder of massive amounts of indigenous people that were there. So this was an area that my native teacher felt that it really needed to be healed and cleaned up. So over 10 days of ceremony, and so one of the altars, I took a picture of the altar, and it had a glass of water from the closest lake, because he wanted the water to be brought, to the ceremony as well, so that we had the connection, right? So that water would now be healed, and wherever that water was put, it would heal whatever needed to be healed. So after I had the pictures and I finally, got them up and I was looking at them, there was this sea foam colored one eye that was in the glass of water. And it kind of like, even though I was used to a lot of paranormal, supernatural things, I was like, whoa, look at the eye in the water. And so I called him and I said, hey, I got this picture I need to send to you, because, and I'm hoping you're going to notice what's going on. And so he's looking at the picture, and I said, did you notice the glass of water? He goes, oh, yeah, look at that. And I said, so why is that eye in the water? Because it kind of shocked me, because it was like, so like, whoa, like, whoa. And he said, he was just totally simple about it, which I think is the same about the seeds and our environment. He said, the water is watching us, the water is showing us itself, and it's showing that it is watching you. It is watching us because it doesn't trust all the way, and it wants to see what we're doing. And it's letting us know that it's paying attention to us now, and it's watching us to make sure that we walk in a good way, that we act in a good way, that we are good beings moving forward to help steward. And this is like, the first step to trust is that it's showing itself to us, the self that is, behind what we normally see, the spirit. Anyway, so I think with the native seeds, that happens as well. And when you are growing, the issue is doing water healing work with water, you may see the spirit right away in the things through the ceremony. But in nature, the seeds and things like you were talking about, it could take 80 years for you to be able to see the real spirit, right? It could take, several years before it introduces you to its offspring, right? That you get to have and take with you. It's children, and that in nature you have to, hold your intention and attention for longer periods of time to constantly be paying attention to it, to watch for those little moments where it unveils itself to you, and then it's willing to teach you. And building that relationship with it is, extremely important. Anyway, that was just what I was thinking about when you were talking about, saving these trees or being around trees that are like extinct, and like what a major, major, major honor, that kind of experience really is. And that you noticed, and that the tree's like, and they noticed.
Yeah, that's how I envision all of this going on in my head. I'm like, I bet that poor tree is like, oh, hey, someone actually cares. Well, this is the first in like 400 years. Oh, but well, I say it's weird, but there's things I admit to people, even if they're skeptic. I'm like, there's things in this world that even I don't understand. And it's like, I have a scientific mind, so my first jump is to ask questions, and usually those questions they cause more questions and that I still don't have answers for. And I'm like, you know what? I just need to shut up and accept the fact that there are things in this world that nobody may understand, but they happen, they exist, and that's what it is. And it's like, I only like being around, I won't say natural trees, but native planet trees that haven't been hybridized, that haven't been bred. I don't like all these pretty fancy hibiscus flowers that these people are breeding around the world and stuff like that. It's like, I don't really care about that. It's like, I want to be around these ancient trees. I want to be around the Franklinia. I want to be around the 500-year-old oak tree down the street. It's like, I don't want to be around anything else. And it's like, of course, as I've moved through life so far and everything, it's like I'm understanding that a little bit better now. But I still find it interesting that it's just something like that I like more than being inside and playing video games. It's like I don't even like that kind of stuff. It's like I want to be outside in nature doing this and doing that, and have my hands in the soil and do what I can. I guess that's why I hate winter so much, because I'm stuck inside and I can't do anything but watch it snow. Right.
I was just thinking about something, we'll have to, I'm working with, it looks like I'm going to be working with this organization called Frigo World. It's a really awesome organization, and how they're developing, for basically kind of economic and community systems to, help a lot of people worldwide. And one of the things that we're discussing is putting up a Waldorf school online for children worldwide. And that will have, also involved in the Waldorf, because it was created by Rudolf Steiner, that, will have a biodynamic farming component and phenomenology class. Hopefully I'll get to teach the biodynamic class. I'm setting up for that once a week for the Waldorf for K through 12 online. And the biodynamic class will have like a phenomenology twist, which is like kind of the spiritual science, kind of what Goethe's work kind of was based on, how to do spiritual science study of, nature and the environment around you. So I was just thinking, we'll probably have to do some test studies and get seed from you guys, and have people order seed from you guys, and then we'll do like a case study with all the kids and on one particular seed, just to see what happens. Do a study like on what does the seed look like when we get it, start journaling about it, drawing, and using the right and left hemispheres in order to do like a whole education system around some of the seeds that you have. I think that would be super fun. So when you were talking today, I was thinking about, wow, I'd really like to add some of these Roughwood Seeds into the mix, for kids. Even if they live in a little apartment, maybe grow a seed and see what happens, right? Maybe heirloom flowers or something like that they can draw and journal about, as it grows, and their feelings and their experiences about it. Because, it would be really great to cultivate, I was always an outside person. I love the outside, I would rather be outside with my shoveling horse poo and building compost than anything else in the entire world. So I totally get you. It's like, I totally get, like, I'd much rather, be out there in a tent, you know what I mean? Surrounded by rain and whatever else environment than be inside. Would like to be part of cultivating kids, relationship back to the seeds, right? Get those seeds into their hands, and they can, especially the more, indigenous seeds, the native seeds, and seeing what they experience. Wouldn't it be, that would just be like the best thing? Have a whole case study of kids who are like examining one seed and growing it, and coming, to the class once a week and talking about their feelings or their experiences of what the plant has shown them or is communicating to them, or, how they feel about it. Wouldn't that just be like so cool? Would be like so great. Learn through the eyes of, a bunch of kids. Anyway. So I think about that because I think we got to get more people touching the seeds and outside, and so that we have generations coming up who will have more people involved in this work, because like I said, I think it's a super important work. Okay, so we're coming into the last 25 minutes. So what do you want to talk about? What else do you have? Because I know you got a mindful in there.
That's the problem. I have so much in my head that I'm like, I need to write this down, but I'm thinking that'll take years. I need to do something, but I'm like, oh, well, what's the point anymore?
Well, what do you think is really important for you right now? Like, what do what are you moving towards? Like, the future. So you've got Roughwood. It's moving forward with, food and seed. And so what do you think? What do you think is like, the next step in the future for people, or what do you think is like important for, people to focus in on right now and move towards, as far as, helping to save the planet, save themselves, save their families, save the animals, save the insects? What do you feel like, if you could explain to people what you think their next bold move should be, and how to make that happen, and where to go with it, what would be your suggestions, your thoughts?
I think because the more people that I come in contact with here at Roughwood, and just in the whole seed community in general and everything, the more that I realize that no matter if you live in an apartment and you don't have a giant garden that you can plant everything you want in. It's like, you don't need that. You can grow tomatoes and beans and squash and potatoes. You can grow them in pots on your patio, on your balcony, on your ladder, or whatever you want to, wherever and whatever you want to do. And it's like, I just want to encourage more people to grow more plants, grow heirloom seed, experience the journey of growing them, learn what they taste like, see how they can cook them, adapt recipes to them, and just get your hands in the dirt and just see what you learn, and what kind of journey that all of this stuff may give you. And the even bigger thing is that one thing that we want to also do here at Roughwood, and that I personally want to do more of, is get more young people involved in this, because most of the seed savers right now and all of the seed industry, it's middle-aged or older people, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but you have to look at it from a point where when these people are gone, who's gonna continue saving these seeds? Who is gonna continue this legacy and all of this other stuff? Because if more young people get involved, then they will know. They will basically know what's right and what's wrong, and what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and they'll get to be raised in an environment where they can better understand the world around them, and all of this stuff that has existed for thousands of years won't just disappear into the middle of nowhere, which is what has sadly been happening all across the world, and the knowledge is just being lost, and all of this. So I usually tell people, if they have children or they know children or something, it's like, get them involved, get them out in the garden, even if they may hate weeding, get them to weed, teach them to enjoy gardening and enjoy growing stuff and learning where food comes from, and all of this stuff that not very many people their age even gets a chance to even really learn or know about. And I guess that's what I want to see the world shift into, is just more young people getting involved in all of this stuff, and continuing this legacy that all of us in this generation and those in the past generations have done, not watching that go in vain. Because it's like, we've spent our lives doing this, and we don't want to see anything happen to it, and neither do the other people that's involved. So I don't know, I just want to get more young people involved and get them loving plants as much as I do. So
yeah, I think, also too, is until you get outside and you really start touching everything and you really start learning from it, you don't realize like what a lie that our history of just about everything that they've given us. And we start to learn that a lot, quite a bit of it is a lie, especially around nutrition and plants. And one point in, for example, is that, and then there's like, the native stories kind of around the contracts, with the four-legged or the animals. But this whole paleo movement and the original paleo people, that were creating the science and the history, sold people that, during this period is where, people ate a lot of meat. And now they're actually going in there and looking at the science, and they're starting to realize like it was fraudulent. They probably would have eaten some meat, whatever, they got a hold of, but they weren't like major like meat eaters. And they're finding this out because they're recovering more and more skulls that have teeth, in them. And the stuff that they're finding in the teeth and between the teeth is all indications is that they mostly ate grasses. So their teeth were not, ground down because they were eating meat and bones and things like that, but they were really ground down because they were eating these tall grasses. And they can see the genetics, of these grasses. And in some places, they think that these grasses were like 50 feet tall. So and a lot of the indigenous plants, like corn originally, I think you told me this, that corn originally goes back to grass, right? There's a lot of different plants like sorghum, right, is in most cultures is considered a grass, right? So a lot of these plants were originally that had seeds, or that people were eating the leaves off of and everything else. And then you think about so the whole original paleo movement and all the paleo books on the paleo diet now, are kind of fraudulent because they're not really based in fact. The fact is that most of the people, the ancestors, ate mostly plants. And so what happens when people get cancer or something like that? One of the first things that they go to is they start drinking wheatgrass. But they take this grass because it's so hard to eat and so hard to chew, and they have to stuff it into a machine to get the juice, right? To get nutrient back in their system. When our ancestors would have been eating those grasses, would actually be chewing on them as a part of their diet. And you could see how much beneficial nutrition that they would have had in them. If, we have some kind of modified wheatgrass that we're drinking now to try to bulk up our nutrition. And then there's just real quick, and then if you have any thoughts about it, but most of my native teachers and a lot of the stories about the original contracts and the agreements that came with the four-leggeds and other animals that, they hunted, the agreements came about because they sometimes there was drought or flooding in areas, or things happened, or fires, and it would burn all the food, and that the indigenous people wouldn't have anything to eat. And so eventually, the animals made contracts with the indigenous people to only eat them when they needed to. That was the contract, and the contract was not to take too much life, right? But that the animals would be willing to step forward under those kinds of relationships to help the people, to stay alive in times of need, that they could eat the animals. And so I think a lot about that in my life, and it kind of leads me more and more towards eating not just naturally from the ground and the land, but to focus more on a plant-based diet, right? So I'm not consuming and being a part of what's happening on the negative side, also to animals, right? And how they're being treated and kept, and that how that food goes into the main food supplies, because there is a huge lack of proper agriculture and local agriculture in areas that people can feed off. And the fact that, it's become such a consumerism, meat, especially commercial meat, dairy, being able to transport this stuff and sell it in grocery stores, is taking away from the fact that we don't have enough real agriculture as far as plant-based diets. And I'm not saying eating meat or anything is a bad thing. I'm just saying that the more that we consume it, the more that we're harming the animals, and the less nutritional value we are also getting out of our food. And we need to focus back on, being more plant-based, planting more grasses, and eating more of these kinds of native plants, even though they're tough. They're probably good on our teeth. So do you have any, we have 10 more minutes. Do you have anything that you kind of along those lines? Any thoughts?
It's like most scientists will agree that humans, we've eaten plants, but we've also eaten animals. But I just like to tend to think that we probably were eating plants long before we were eating animals, and it's really a matter of respect in the whole native mindset too, of not only respecting the animals but also respecting the plants, because they too are our brothers and sisters. And when we mistreat them, then we're not only mistreating nature and that that plant or that animal, but we're also in turn mistreating ourselves. So that's why that a lot of this environmental harm that we're doing, people think it's just to the environment, which in the least sense of it, yeah, that is the case. But we're also affecting ourselves more than we are anything else. And this is one of the things that I think the world is going to have to look at better and try to change if we're not going to completely destroy some of these areas that will actually in turn make us not even be able to grow anything, period. And because with these heirlooms and everything, well, they can adapt, but all of this other stuff that has been bred and created, it can't. And I don't know, it's a very sad thing with how we've treated some of the natural world and everything, but it's one reason why I do what I do and why I want to get more people involved in it and try to especially get more young people doing this kind of stuff, because we just need them to be broken out of the lies that they've been fed and told, and let them see the truth, because the truth is in the seed. Truth is in the food that comes from the seed. So it's all of the stuff like that just really gets me going and makes me wish the world was different than it is. But I know what I'm doing has a good impact. So, and I hopefully the future generations will also see that and continue to do it too.
Right. Well, there's no plan B. There isn't the seed store, floating over there on the moon. So once the things are gone on the planet, there's no plan B. I think that's hard for people to grasp sometimes, especially in a world where there's a lot of consumerism, where they can just go to the store and get something new, or get what they need. That sometimes they forget that for some of these things there is no plan B, unless you're somebody like Stephen Smith, who has got the plan B under control, at least in the seed world. But people have to realize, you like to think you have?
I like to think I have things under control, but sometimes I do. Most of the time I do, not always, but I let the plants do whatever they want to do, because I'm like, it's your world, it's not my world. So you do you, and I'll just follow along and try to make you happy.
Hey, that is that's really great. I love that. You do what you do, and I'll just follow along and try to make you as happy as I possibly can.
There's really, that's the way I see everything. It's like, yeah, I'm planting all of this stuff and growing it, but really, in the true sense of everything, it's planting me, and it's making me grow, helping me learn, and it's cultivating me as much as I'm cultivating it, which is what it does for anyone that grows all of this stuff and everything, which is something else that I try to get people to see and learn, but they don't always do that. But it's a thought that counts, I guess. So.
Yeah, no, I had it reminds me of this summer. I planted these Hopi sunflowers, that were a total trip, and the corn that I grew kind of imprinted, let's say, the Hopi sunflowers, in a significant way. And the birds, where I live in the desert, we have some ravens and crows and stuff, but not really, big birds that eat a lot of seeds, right? We have teeny little guy birds. Anyway, these big sunflower plants, they would land on them, and they wanted those seeds that were in there, but they weren't, big enough to pull these, seeds out. And so part of, the giveaway or the give back was I took a third of all the seed heads, and then I kind of pulled them apart in a way where I kind of left the seeds in them, and then I secured them to this table so that the small birds could actually, be able to taste the sunflower seeds, get them, and be able to utilize them in their diet. And watching those little birds, being able to get their part of the harvest, because they actually helped me to keep a lot of the insect problems down, while the grow was happening. Would come in and do their part of, pollinating and having a relationship with the plants. Their reward really was these seeds. And so, how the seed contributes, to, all aspects, of our world, and being able to give back those seeds, to the animals in the environment, in which some of them have grown, and watching, like how delighted and excited these little birds were to get those seeds. Once I opened those heads up, then they could land on top of them, and then they could actually yank on them and, get them out. But it was like a flurry once they realized like they could have access to those seeds. And I had the heads, put on the table, and watching, how amazing it was to watch them be able to feed off those Hopi seeds, right, in the environment, especially even out in a desert, where we have a really big food desert for all beings out here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always love watching, because when I grow sunflowers here, and even back home when I grew sunflowers, they always loved they loved pecking seeds out of the heads, and they never would destroy all of the seed. They would leave some for me that I could save for the next year, and they would go after the seed heads that weren't the strongest and that didn't have the best seed in them. So I'm like, well, you're actually helping me out more than you're doing. And it's like, I prefer you to eat this good seed than getting something that who knows what it's been processed with and everything else. So it's like you're giving back and they're giving to you. And that's the thing that I think people need to realize, is that nature will work with you if you work with it. It'll respect you if you respect it. You get out what you give. So it's as simple as that. If that's simple. So,
and if you're not getting out there growing, you're not going to notice things like that, where the birds are taking the weaker seeds and leaving the stronger ones, because there's something even in them that they understand that the strong seed has to be regrown, right? The strong seed has to go on. And then, so there's a lot more that we can learn from nature, just like we've been talking about for all those people out there, than you can probably learn from science by just, planting and seeing what happens. Okay, so tell us where we can find you. Okay, so we have the seed website. He has Roughwood, www.roughwoodtable.org. That's where all these beautiful seeds are, and books and things that you can go. Where can people find you here in the last minute in case they want to get a hold of you? You have you have a seed page, Seed Preservation, don't you? Facebook?
Yeah, I have the Seeds of Preservation Independence is the Facebook page that myself and another couple people helped me run. I'm also on Facebook. It would be facebook.com /white, WHTE, Wolf 96. I'm on Instagram, if anyone's on Instagram, as @Maze Shaman, all lowercase. And you can always email us at roughwoodtable.org. I'm usually the one that answers the email. So, but otherwise, anyone's free to reach out and tell me stories, donate seed, or anything like that, whatever anyone wants to do.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I know that you are busy, and it's hard for you to come on the show, but I really love having you on the show, and I love people being able to, be able to talk, hear, conversations about seeds and, our planet and the work ahead of us. And those of us that are, on the ground, getting the work done so that other people can jump in and start carrying it forward as well. So I really appreciate you. And I definitely will be in touch in the near future, and as soon as I have the land, and so I can, start getting all kinds of amazing seeds from you guys, and start building new relationships to new plants that I've not known before. So anyway, that's the end of the show, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Stephen. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or computer failure took out your bank or all the